We are live and we are recording. Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we have Trevor from Crowd Tamers with us, doing a course with us. Usually this is the pattern we follow. Obviously, we like to pull in the instructors and do a webinar where we explore a little bit on the topic, pick their mind a little bit more on what they're teaching, and also just bring in that conversation side to the topic. So today we've got Trevor. Trevor is going to share something very interesting with us, and he brought it to my attention personally last year. I think it was October or November. We spoke the first time. Something he calls the MVS framework, and I've been personally using it quite a bit with CXL, but also with some other brands on my personal side and consultation. I didn't think I'll ever launch anything differently. I can start making that statement, and it's one of those things where I feel as the marketer, it's like, why didn't I think of this sooner? It's that obvious, but it's that powerful at the same time. So personally, I'm super excited to learn more about this on my end, and I'm quite sure this holds a tremendous amount of value for everyone out there. So yeah, Trevor, I think let's kick off with a quick introduction about yourself, your background, and your experience, and then we can take the conversation from there.
Sure. So I'm Trevor Longino. I'm the founder and owner of Crowd Tamers. We are a agency that specializes in marketing for startups and for new ideas. We built $100+ million marketing engine in the last 4 years. And a key part of what we do, and what I've been doing now for almost 15 years in one form or another as a marketer, is figuring out really quickly and really cheaply, is this cool idea that I have any darn good? And the minimum viable sprint is kind of the result of a decade plus of iteration on finding the most efficient way to answer that question. Before you develop product, before you invest deeply in a marketing campaign, before you really do much of anything, you run minimum viable sprints to understand what your audience wants to hear. Because one of the truisms of good marketing is no one cares about you. They care about them. So think of how to speak to them, test, understand how to speak for them, and then you'll make a lot more money when you're a marketer.
And then you double down from there. Yeah, so great. Yeah. Thank you, Trevor. I think right from the first thing, because when we say minimal viable sprint, there's a lot of like room for what is this in that name. And unless you actually read or continue explaining what this is, no one has any idea what that is. So I think let's start right there. Let's break it down on like a top level of what is this? What do you kind of require? Because I know obviously Meta sits there, like the Meta ads, and there's PPC in here, paid media. So let's break down what this means, because we're obviously going to be discussing this framework for the rest of the webinar. And just so everyone is listening in and watching this afterwards, understand exactly what this is that we are discussing and that we will be talking about.
Sure. So the idea is, as a marketer, I've spent a lot of time being wrong. And it's because it's really hard to be right consistently. And one thing I learned early was if I can find a way to reduce the cost of being wrong as small as possible, then I have reduced the challenges I've given myself by being wrong. So a minimum viable sprint is delivering the least amount of effort I possibly can and still consider this a marketing campaign. And to do the minimum version of a marketing campaign, you have to do three things. You have to try out a crowd of people. That's the crowd of Crowd Tamers. You have to try out a crowd of people. See if there's an audience who you can target. You have to figure out if you can start conversations with them. And now, conversation here is, I don't mean an actual necessarily a dialogue, because a conversation starts when somebody sees something you've said and wants to know more, right? It sounds like a one-sided conversation because you're not seeing what they're doing. But you put something out in the world and they start to respond, the conversation begins. And then finally, you have to start to understand if there's scale behind this crowd and this conversation that you're starting. And if you can't find scale unless you're selling to like the US government with a customer base of one, you're not going to have a business idea. And so what you do is you make ad campaigns, $100 ad campaigns that run for 48 hours. And you go into this trying different ways to talk about something you want to do. And the trick is you're not making tiny tests. A couple years ago now, almost 2 years ago now, when I was testing a new headline for my website, we had 3 things I was trying. One was, we build $1 million marketing engines guaranteed. The other was what my website used to say, which is go to market backed by data. And the third one was, we're the agency you call second after the first one has screwed up. Right? These are 3 completely different ways to approach what's the value prop of my business. It's not like, hey, we build $1 million marketing engines guaranteed, and we build $1 million marketing engines, we promise. Right? For a minimum viable sprint, it's stupid to test things that small. You test really big
different directions. Yeah.
And then the way you test it is Meta, LinkedIn, you could even do Google. You're going to take an ad and you're going to run the ad to your target audience, and you're going to see how many of them click. Now, anybody who's smart enough to be attending CXL marketing courses, you're all very smart. You must be. You're here. You have to know that measuring click-through rate as the end goal of a campaign is stupid. But we're measuring just the very, very beginning. This is effectively a 1-question survey. You're saying, hey, do you want whatever this ad says? And the answer, of course, is overwhelmingly no, I don't want that, right? But if you get at least 1% clicking and saying, yeah, I do want that, that puts you in the top third of all ads ever run on Meta. But there's a catch, because there's always a catch. I could put a picture of a donut on an ad for an ERP software, and I'd get a 1% click-through rate because people love donuts. Do you want my software? I don't know. They want my donuts. Well, I'm not selling donuts. I made a mistake. So instead, you have to remove all of the graphics from this minimum viable sprint, and it is just text on a plain white, blue, like whatever color you want background. Because then if your ad with no graphic design gets a 1% click-through rate, that's because the message is speaking. It's enough top of mind for somebody where they're scrolling their, I don't know, Ariana Grande videos on Meta or whatever, and they see this and they go, oh, that's right, I do need that. And you got them to switch context and go check you out. That's a lot, right? A 1% click-through rate on a Google search ad is trashed here. But on a interruptive display ad on a place where you're doing something else, that's pretty good. So that's what you're looking for, really, is, can I find an audience? Can I find a crowd? Can they engage enough? Are they interested? And then also, are there enough of them? If I can only find 2,000 of them, I probably haven't got much money there. If I can find 500,000 of them, okay, we're starting to think there's maybe something I can monetize.
Cool. There we go. Very basic. It seems too easy, actually. So just to summarize that, you take, and also just lending, and I've been using this as, it could be anything from a headline on a website to your actual value proposition to new product benefits, or like a new product launch, or even a brand launch. What do people care about the most? I'm currently sitting on my consultation side. I've got a new customer who's launching a washing detergent, and they're like, we've got all these nice things. It's like non-toxic chemicals. It's biodegradable. It's really good for the ocean. We remove plastic bottles, and it smells great. And I'm like, what do people care about the most? You can actually test this with this thing. You go out and you take all those different directions and you put it in front of the same people and you say which one is actually getting the best click-through rate. And I like the fact that it removes the vanity metric from click-through rate, because usually people are like, like you just mentioned, this is not the end goal, but here it's really simple. I'm taking $100 and I'm making that very single, very basic action. It's either a click or it's not a click. It's a yes or a no. Like, I put something in front of you, whether it's a positioning, a value proposition, a headline, a benefit, a product, brand. I put it in front of you and I ask, do you want to click this? And if the person clicks, it's a yes. If they don't, it's a no. And then obviously, just to be very specific on that targeting, if you reach 10,000 people and 1% of them click, you knew you're onto something. So it's I find it very interesting and super valuable. And like I said, I've been running this the whole time, and I've built out these boards where I got like 5 variants, and then one of them make it, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should then test like too close a variance, or like constantly till I get to a point where I'm like, okay, this is by like without a doubt the best message to put to this specific audience, and then we'll double down on that and then start graphic design.
Exactly.
The nice thing. So yeah, the easiest way to not be wrong. There we go. Because I guess that's what marketing is, right? It is a series of tests to figure out what works, and you want to spend as little money as possible on figuring out what works. To spend money on that what works. Just quick question. So you say it can be run on anything. The 1% Meta top 3%, what does those statistics look like when you're talking a banner ad, a LinkedIn ad, for instance, or even a Reddit ad, or depending on where you go based on where your audience is likely? Is it always, it's not always 1%, right?
So broadly on display, which is interruptive, right? 1% is pretty good. Now, you end up with, you can treat like an inbox as effectively a 86 character display ad, right? If you send cold email, and if you got people to open that email. Now, open rates are crap because a lot of software now just automatically opens every image, so you can't see what the open rate is for somebody. But reply rate there would be the actual interest. If your reply rate is 2 or 3%, on a cold email, that's a pretty good reply rate. Cool, you can test it this way. There are some differences platform to platform, right? If you're running a search ad, 4% is pretty good on the click-through rate. So when you're on a different platform, it will vary some. Like on LinkedIn or on Meta, 1% click-through rate on a display ad is pretty good. On Google Display, 0.7, 0.9, somewhere around there is pretty good. Google Display, as like a whole separate thing, is a wretched hive of scum and villainy. And if you're starting out, like LinkedIn or Meta are the easy ones where you won't just throw all your money down a hole because you didn't know that, hey, you don't want to be on all the gambling websites or whatever Google does to you. So I recommend Meta is like the really easy one for anybody to start. LinkedIn is okay. You'd have to spend a little more frequently. The $100 in 48 hours really is, we need to see for every variant, and you shouldn't have more than 4, for every variant at least 1,000 impressions. So if you're on LinkedIn and you spend $100 and you're like, oh, I only have 600 impressions on each ad unit, well, chuck an extra 50 on top, right? Get to where you crossed that 1,000 impressions per ad unit. What we're looking for is an instrument that's sensitive enough to give us basically a plus or minus 1/3 of 1% measurement on that click-through rate. Because if we do that 2 or 3 times, then the error rates cancel each other out, and you end up with like a 99.2% confidence in the performance of an ad. So you accept a lot of low value, like low accuracy tests, right? Low expense tests as well. If you run 3 or 4 of them, you're out $400, right? So you can be wrong a whole lot with a minimum viable sprint, and then you find the one that works on the 10th sprint, and okay, I'm out $1,000, right? Then I double down, I check it out. Hey, I spent $1,200. I know this is the way to go, and away you go. I think of, you go to McKinsey and you say, hey, I want you to do audience research for me. Who should I market my washing powder to? They will take $100,000, and at the end of 6 months of research, they're going to give you something that is still mostly qualitative, right? It's research up front, but it is not actual buyer behavior, because they didn't try to model an actual buyer journey. Instead of waiting 6 months and spending $100,000, you can spend 1/10 of 1% that much in just 2 days and get much more useful tactical data. This is why I like minimum viable sprints. These actually started, I developed these years and years ago. I was working at a video game company called Good Old Games, and we were sending emails out to a list of 1 million people. And this was a scratch-built email software. So we couldn't do like a modern ESP does, where you send to 10% of the list and you see which subject line has the best open rate, and then you couldn't do that. We could click a button and send all 1 million emails. That was the only feature. So we wanted to know up front, before we sent the email, we wanted to know what's the good subject line. And so we were sending on Wednesday and on Friday to 1 million people. And the difference between a good subject line and a bad subject line was about $30,000 in revenue twice a week. And so I went, well, let me test this. And so I was running ads on Meta back when you weren't supposed to have text-only ads. So that was our own problem to try and sort.
Told you there's the pixel thing, and like, hey, you put too much text in here.
back in the day, we had to find ways to, we would basically put a simple little gradient and some video game art on it and then put the text small, whatever. Anyway. And so we would do that. And we found consistently the best performing ad was also the best performing subject line over the course of, I think we did 6 tests over the course of, I think, 2 months. So then we switched, right? And every Monday we would test the Wednesday newsletter, and every Wednesday we test the Friday one. And we spent, like a couple grand over the course of that year, like I think 7-8 grand. I remember the accounting department being like, "You've wasted all this money, Trevor, all of these ads, no money from it. You're a bad marketer." And I went, "Yes, but let's open up the tab on this other spreadsheet and look at the difference in performance. We've earned almost $1 million
more just by
spending this $8,000. And they went, "Oh, never mind. You may keep doing that." I'm like, "You're darn right I may."
Yeah, that's so cool. Because the same logic applies, right? That's if more people, and you're obviously targeting more or less the same audience. If more people click the one, it's a very viable A/B test to go and say, this is the better subject line.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm a very big fan. What I've been doing with CXL is because sometimes the targeting it gets, what I found personally is let's take the e-commerce crowd, for instance. There's different ways of targeting. I can go to LinkedIn and target marketing managers at e-commerce companies and say, here's a very cool bundle if you want to do CRO on your website and turn more clicks into sales without spending more money. Very easy to target the right person on LinkedIn. Yes, it's obviously more expensive. On Facebook, I don't have that very concrete target. You have to go a different route. You go the interest, the platform. So, Shopify, drop shipping, DTC, the whole thing. What I've also been doing is actually testing the targeting one-to-one. So I run exactly the same set and see then where that, is there a very big significant difference between the click-through rate for the platforms with the same audience, and I do exactly the same budget on each of them, and that's been helping me go hey, maybe Meta isn't a great place to run these ads. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. We're going to have slightly lower reach, but we know we're reaching the right person on LinkedIn with this. Then in other cases, other interests work better on Meta. So if we go now over to the next question really, or the next subject, which for me is almost the applications. I assume you've used this across the board, from everything from e-commerce brands to B2B to probably non-profit organizations. You've seen the shebang. So what's the different applications where you commonly go, just do I always do this, or is it this is better if you're running a web shop or if you're a B2B company? What do you kind of propose this for in the different instances?
Sure. So I originated this in a B2C company, right? Video game distribution is as B2C as it gets. And I have now used it in, literally every industry you mentioned. My wife is CEO of a nonprofit, so I've been using minimum viable sprints to test their messaging for donors, for nonprofits, and their messaging for clients as well, for acquisition on both sides. For service industries, right? My business is a service business, B2B, and works for me. Every single client we sign on CrowdTamers starts with that. We used to be if you're really sure you know who to sell to, I guess we won't run minimum viable sprints. And we've learned the hard way that always ends up with tears and remorse, because everyone thinks they know who they sell to. And they may indeed know someone who they sell to, but they don't necessarily know the best way to talk to the best people.
Or if there's a crowd out there that actually cares more than the one you thought. That also happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're looking for here, and the reason why I set this hard number, right, 1% click-through rate, and then whichever is better than 1%, awesome, validate, get 2 or 3 times you've repeated the same signal, and if so, let's go. Is there's probably always someone better, right? You can always improve from where you are, but what you need to do is find good enough to make money, and then let's go. And I've got a couple clients now who are running successful businesses, $1 million, $2 million, $4 million a year. But they got stuck there because they couldn't figure out how to grow beyond where they are, because they're maybe using one channel for acquisition, right? Just LinkedIn, or one of them is a successful marketing tech firm, and the founder has got really good social reach. And so he just sells his product, but the messaging was not super clear. And it's funny, we actually did a test last week now where we had run 3 minimum viable sprints for them. And so we had our winning headlines. And then we took all the headlines from their website and we ran them against each other. And first, second, third, and fourth place were our minimum viable sprints, and fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth place were their website headlines. Right? It is very rare you get that strong a signal where you're like, hey, this is how you should talk to your audience, not this.
Not this, yeah.
But with that stronger signal, they were like, holy crap, now we see why we couldn't scale, was because we were talking about our audience the way that we thought they wanted to hear from us. And I mean, they're making a couple million a year. They're clearly good at it, but there's more opportunity. So almost any industry, there are a few caveats. You've got to be able to get the data. And I note that minimum viable sprints is the start of a buyer's journey, right? After they've clicked on your ad, eventually you have to gather these leads in some way. Once you've gathered these leads in, you have to nurture them in some way. And then once you're nurturing them, you have to close them in some way. And if you don't have good data throughout that entire journey, you're going to really struggle to apply a data-centric approach to growing and building your marketing system. And I would note, if you get my course from CXL, not to flog it, but hey, we're all here, I show you how to do all of that with exact real-world examples. I spent like 2 hours just screen sharing, building things,
there we go,
and saying, hey, here's the theory, let me show you how it works. Because that way you're able to see from somebody who's done this more than 100 times, this is my approach.
Yeah, so I think that's where the magic starts happening, right? So I just want to, first of all, like just point out something there. What I've also picked up running this is there's, like, I mean, marketing is, we make a lot of assumptions. We know we shouldn't. Everyone knows this. Like we know we need to test. And I mean, that's what we're preaching at CXL is like the best marketers don't guess, they test. But we can't help to have the gut feeling. We all have it every single time. Every time you launch something, every time you make a design, every time you launch a campaign, the gut feeling is there. It's like that hope of like, maybe this one works. And what I like about this model is how many times it's just proven me that it constantly happens where it proves my gut feeling wrong. Not that I'm sentimental about the gut feeling, but it's constantly where the gut feeling is wrong. And then almost the one that I thought would not work, that's like the odd one out. Is the one that hits the hardest. And I'm like, why this one? Or like, it's the most basic one sometimes. It's like, yes, we try to be creative. And I always have this very straightforward option, like, buy CRO training. Cool. That's the,
hey, there you go.
That's what people care about. Don't go and tell them the best marketers don't guess, they test. Buy CRO training. It works. And this is what I like about it, because like every time you put these 4 variants on the table, like, yes, there's one that you kind of nudge to and you're like, I hope it's this. And this one is where, clearly the nicest, we can sparkle the most marketing dust. It's not always what you think it works. And I really like that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I would never launch anything differently again. Like whether it's a campaign, it's the easy way. Like, hey guys, let's just put the 4 cards on the table. Let's push them out. 48 hours later, we've got the data, go do something else for 48 hours. And then just look at it. And the cool thing is also not a hell of a lot of data to actually digest. Like it's very quickly, you literally open up your, whichever like platform you're now running, you just look at the ads and your information is right there. Oh, there's a 0.3, there's a 0.7, there's a 1.2%, there's 0.9. And now you can go and say, okay, cool. Let's maybe fine tune between the 0.9 and the 1.2. Target that to the same audience or fine tune the audience or whatnot. And then within like 3 to 4 days, you've got a hell of a lot of clarity on in which direction at least you want to go. And then, yes, as you mentioned, there's still an entire funnel. You still need to pull the conversion over the line. But it can also, what we've seen is it also helps like identify things, because in one instance, I've had a lot of people click the button, and then a lot of people click the button on the website as well, which is obviously not what we're trying to go for. And then you realize, like, why did so many people click the button but not completely go through the funnel? And we're like, maybe we should change that actual funnel, because there's another data point that we accidentally ran into. So I think it's great. So once again, you can use this in everything across the board. And it's, the creativity with just this is also limitless, right? There's different. People will do your course and come up with new ways to use this. Probably ways that you haven't thought of to date. So
I would love that.
Yeah,
I
because
spent 15 years knowing that I'm wrong more than 90% of the time, right? And that teaches a certain humility because, well, like, I've been a CMO for 15 years, and to still be wrong that much when someone says, hey, I used your idea and I did this, it's super exciting to see. I actually have coming out early next week somebody who I think bought my book and my did training with me 2 years ago and on minimum viable sprints and used it in his business and is like, this is what I got out of it. And he did he's in data science, so he did a bunch of like deep data modeling that I don't do because I'm not a mathematician. I'm a mustache. But it was enough for him to be able to say, like, look at all these things I learned out of it. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm glad you got more out of it than I put into it. I think it's kind of like you give somebody a simple tool set, right? Here's a hammer and a saw.
what do you do
You're
with
going to
that?
go build something. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan. And what I also like about it is the fact that this works at, I don't even want to say startup level. It works at like idea inception. Like if you're any individual that's not even a founder or an entrepreneur, like if you've got an idea and you're willing to bet $100 on that idea, you can do it. And with not a lot of like setup. I mean, setting up a Meta ad account is probably more effort than running these ads and coming up with
much more effort than running the ads.
That's the biggest thing you have to like get through, the biggest loop. But you can probably validate a business idea if you're willing to bet $100 on it, and then all the way through to massive enterprise companies launching new products, thinking about new features. And I mean, you can. If you want to run these things and not attach it to your brand, you can obviously make a dud account or like a fake account where you run just the test if you don't want it to associate with like a big brand, which is like if you run like a very big brand and you might be testing a new product or feature, that might be a good idea. But yeah, it works across the scale for everyone, and it costs the guy with the idea $100, and it costs the enterprise person $100, and it's So,
and I've seen great success at both ends, right? I had years ago Standard Chartered Bank, which is not a small business. They are, I think, the second largest bank in Asia, and they had launched a product that was a B2C insurtech/invest tech app. And they hired, I won't say who because this is being broadcast, but a really big agency to launch the product for them. And the really big agency spent $750,000 and got them 500 users for their B2C app. They did not make any money with this. And because I knew a guy, I got invited to the tender to fix the launch. And this is not my usual client. It's Standard Chartered Bank out of Singapore, right? I don't know these guys. And so I made the pitch. They were like, this is insanely cheap. They hired me, and I think they also hired someone else because they're like, this guy is so cheap to do the turnaround. We'll hire somebody else too, because if he sucks, we're only out like, I think the total price I quoted them, which was some ridiculous, I was like, let me make up a big number, was like 50 grand. Like, so I'm like, you're a bank, you literally make money. I can charge you whatever I want. You can just make more. And over the course of 12 weeks, pivoted the entire product from where it was to a new demographic that was 97% cheaper on user acquisition, and had no one else in the industry was trying to fight for these people. Basically, when you sell investment tech in Asia, you sell to head of household, male over the age of 40. What we found was young moms with a second baby on the way would download this app and then talk to their husband and say, look, we need to balance out our investment and our insurance, and we need to do it now because if you get hit by a bus, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And so, like, we found this whole area completely changed the product and did it over the course of 3 months. And mostly it was so slow because we were working with Standard Chartered Bank. This could have been probably 3 weeks. 3 months, and the actual ad spend cost for them, I think, was $2,000 for the whole pivot, right?
Well, just to get all the insight and to find a new audience.
Yeah. Insanely valuable. They ended up, the other agency who was supposed to also help, they were a branding agency, and they were like, hey, we're doing branding for men over the age of 40. Here's where it has to look. And then so I took their new brand and then the brand I built, which looked kind of like looked very kind of Whole Foods, like, yogurt, Yoga Mom Crunchy type positioning. And we went, well, this one that Trevor developed is so much more performative. So away they went, right? Like that, a big enterprise. But then also you mentioned you have your own not branded name, right? If you don't want to test something under your brand, I own littlelandingpagers.com. And whenever I have a client who doesn't have a landing page or doesn't want to use their brand, I'll run the ads there, right? I've taken somebody who had a legal tech idea, thought it was cool, wanted to try it out. We spent $400. He proved, yeah, this can work. He went off and got investment, right? Mm-hmm. Either end of the scale works. Heck, I built and sold my own little product 2 years ago now. I validated the idea with ads. We decided we should build it. We built it, and then we sold it. We had 2 customers, and we sold the whole app to one of them, all in, I think, what was that? 12 weeks. So like you can test an idea, and then sometimes
and that's
surprisingly
that's the thing, it's validated. It's not, because I mean, so many, don't want to tell or say people get lucky, but oftentimes like a lot of brands that really make it out the door, they do get lucky. It's like, yes, obviously you had a good idea and you might think you're selling to the best people, maybe not the best crowd, but somehow you did hit the right crowd and you did put a thing in front of them that there's at least some insight. Maybe it comes from like an observation in the market, or some research is behind it. But a lot of times people do put a lot of effort in before validation, and yes, they start running, and that's usually also where your business is obviously slowed down, where you hit that plateau of like the 1 million, 2 million. It's like, cool, we made it this far because we've got something that's cool and valuable, but maybe we're not talking to the right people, and maybe we should have done a little bit extra testing. But hey, then you can still do it. That's the nice thing about it. So it's cool. So I think that frames like the applications. You can really use this in every industry, on every level that you can think of, and the same thing applies. Like you put the four cards with minimal design. You run $100 ad for 48 hours to an audience or different audience if you want to test them against each other, and see what comes out, and then use the data and build on that. So obviously we don't have time to go into the whole playbook, and that's why you have the course, because like you said, you show how to do it. So not to take anything away from that, but obviously this webinar will be watched by more people that do the course. Naturally, that is how it works, and I do want to give the people value, because now I've got the blog, I send out the newsletter that will have the webinar and will have the course. So pick your poison. And I mean, the blog that we put out is actually was enough for me to really start running this. So let's try to do the same thing. What is that? What is the playbook? So we've got, obviously you can use any of the ad platforms. That's basically the tools you need. You do not need a graphic designer. You can literally make this Microsoft Paint for like a blank white background with black text on it. I believe I'm including a download in the course with CXL. You've got the pack.
Where, you can get the ads pack. So it's pre-designed. Although honestly, like you can go, find Figma, Illustrator, Canva, wherever. They have the IAB ad sizes, and then just type words. Now, the caveat here, because I see people do this, I savaged a startup last week at a startup judging event where I saw their ads, and they had a Facebook ad. So, 120 pixels by 900 pixels with, I think it was 75 words on the ad. And I'm like, what do you, no one's going to read your ad. Stop it. So like 12 words or fewer on the ad. 75 words is too much. We're not reading War and Peace here, right? It's a slogan. Now, when you run an ad, you have above the ad more explainer text, both in Meta and in LinkedIn. On Google Display, not so much. Put all the words you want to put there, right?
Yeah,
I did test once
because read more. Yeah, that's
I did test once because I thought it would be funny. With a minimum viable sprint, I included a 12,000 word blog post as the text you can expand. So when you clicked it, you had 18 pages to scroll. And unsurprisingly, that ad didn't perform very well, but I did want to see what happens if you do it. It was only $100. Why not give it a try, right?
That's where people close the app, swipe away, clean, go back.
Go for a drink, think about their life, and then come back. Yes, exactly. So, don't do that. But, get 12 words on the ad, right? Anybody can lay it out in Canva. It requires this much graphical talent. Then you have to set up your ad account. You have to connect a credit card. You have to find your audience. I have found if you get search on Google for audience targeting options for LinkedIn or audience targeting options for Facebook, whichever, you're going to get people have written blog posts about this, so they list them all. Just copy all of them, and then go to ChatGPT and say, I want to target these people. This is my ideal customer profile based off of how the targeting options are for this platform, which I'm going to paste below. How would you do it? And then ask ChatGPT to do it for you. That way, if you don't know how to build an audience, they'll tell you, hey, you're going to want to do this age demographic and these audience targeting options. Now you're equipped with success. Away you go. Right?
You would get about 90% out of it at least.
Yeah.
It might be one or two tags that's maybe not there, or like new ones that it doesn't know about. But yeah, I agree.
And especially on Facebook, there are, I think, something like, I think it's 7,000 targeting options that you cannot get to from the UI. You have to know they exist and type them in. Which that's a pain in the butt. And I wouldn't worry about it for right now. Just take the ones that are available and go. But do think about using a tool to assist you. This is your first time doing a media buy because you don't know how to target. So you've got your targeting, you've got your ads, you make your ad account. This all told, if you're new at this, is not going to be probably more than 2 hours. I've done this a bunch. It takes me like 20 minutes because I just click, and away I go. And Facebook's UI is trashed here. Like you look at it and every button isn't where it should be. And also the next time you log in, it's somewhere else. But anyway, you can make your way through. So all that setup done, you launch this, $100, couple $100, whatever you're spending if you're doing more than one test at a time. And then in 48 hours, you're going to know of everything I ran for all these audiences. Here's what worked best. Now, these are run with basically a 90% confidence interval if you're following my math given in the course, which means there's a 10% chance that this is actually not true. So you want to run these things at least twice. You run them twice, we get to about a 95% confidence interval. That's usually good enough for a statistician to say, let's go. And then you do still have to keep in mind, if you build out the rest of your funnel, or as I say in the course, engine, as you're building up the rest, right? There's still a 5% chance is not a big chance. It is 1 in 20, but it is still a chance. If you get further through the progression and you start to find you can't make headway, you can get people to come to the landing page where they won't sign up. Okay, then something's wrong, and it may even be back to your fundamental messaging. Whenever you're building your way up, always be prepared. If you need to take one step back, you should not have to. It should be very rare. But I built $100+ million marketing engines. Each of them has 5 steps, right? That means I see every month 1 or 2 examples of I built an engine. I'm like, oh, we had that 5% error rate show up here. We got to step back 1, right? Okay.
It's good you mentioned that because people might run into it. It's
So okay. And then once you've got people coming to a landing page, like the 2 mistakes everyone makes. When you begin testing just your audience validation, your minimum viable sprints, you don't care about the landing page. I get people caught up on this. And they're like, I'm making 8 different variants of my ads. I have to make 8 different landing pages. No, you don't. Because out of those 8, somewhere between 0 to 2 of them will be any good, right? And all the rest of them will suck. So why bother making those pages? But then once you know what you should say, the next mistake everyone makes is, I'll just send this traffic to my homepage. Now, a CXL marketer should know better, but you got to make sure your landing page fulfills the promise that your ad made. If you say, hey, we build $1 million marketing engines guaranteed, that's the CrowdTamer slogan, and you go to a landing page that says, we're a startup marketing agency, you're going to go, WTF, mate, right? Close the tab, away you go. And then the third thing is once you've signed up, if you're product-led, and you dump these people from a custom campaign to a custom landing page to your standard onboarding, now you've lost them all again because they came into your product to solve a particular problem. You found the problem. You know they want to solve this problem. And then you go, great, welcome into our app. Here's the 3 screens you have to understand. Like, no, I want to understand how to get to the problem I signed up to solve. And if you make that happen, then you'll find all your onboarding numbers look great. If you're sales led and somebody comes from the ad to the landing page and books a call and you say, tell me what your problem is.
You already failed, yeah.
You already know what it is because they told you. And your presentation shouldn't be the deck you use for everybody. It should be, we solved this problem and we're experts at it. And then they go, oh, wow, that's exactly what I wanted to hear, right? When people tell you what they want, you have to build the rest of the engine to match it, or else all the work we did to find out what they want was wasted.
Mm-hmm. $1 million advice. So simple. So simple. Yet so many people get it wrong all the day, every day. And we all do it. Like it's such easy mistakes to make. Cool. Yeah, obviously that first part is if you haven't run ads. Like obviously if you've got a team running PPC, that it looks a bit different, but they focus a bit more on thinking about what you want to put out there. Like what is it that you actually what you're testing.
But if you have a team who runs ads, in some ways it's harder because you have to get them to mentally switch from I run broad match on Meta to a 50 million person audience with the conversion tracking running on my website. What do you mean you want to spend $100 with an audience you picked up front? That's a stupid way to run an ad. And depending on your goal, they are right. But the goal is different than when you're doing an e-com ad to sell sneakers to 50 million people in the US. And if you can't make the mental switch over to what the goal is for this, then inevitably the marketer will say, well, look, okay, I get some of the ideas. Yeah, we'll test our messaging, but we'll test it to a 50 million person audience. And then the amount of spend and time and investment, they go, oh, those are stupid looking ads. We'll make them look nice too, right? And then you get to where you're not testing the right thing anymore because your marketer, who's a very experienced performance marketer, doesn't get what you're trying to do with this. And so it's like if you had a hammer and a saw, but your marketers only ever used a hammer and you give them a saw, they're not going to drive nails very well with the saw. So you have to get them flexible enough to go, all right, I got to switch over to what this is. And then when we know enough, it goes back into the other thing we do. What you will find is when you get a message that works really well for a small target audience, and then you go to a broader audience and run those ads, Meta's algorithm or LinkedIn's algorithm will filter out by a great number of qualifiers that we don't have access to in the front end to buy, and will bring you more people who kind of look like the folks who were clicking on the smaller audience ad because the language tends to exclude other people. And so when you're solving a very narrow problem, the audience who really wants that problem solved will self-select and the AI will optimize to show more of them. So as an example, one of my clients, I think I can say this, one of my clients, they're in the pharmacovigilance space, which didn't know that was a word until a couple of months ago.
Neither did I, first time.
But when you make an ad that says, hey, we do this for pharmacovigilance, you better believe everybody else in healthcare is not clicking on the ad, right? The language is exclusionary. And so when you're doing ad copy that is that kind of exclusionary language, your audience will self-select. But first you want to see for the audience what's the best language, and then you roll this out to a broader audience to let them pick themselves out of the giant mass of people.
Cool. Like I said, $1 million advice. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point on the, if you've got a team, it actually gets harder. I haven't thought about that. So you almost want to isolate this or like treat it as, okay, guys, we're running a side project and bear with me. Like we're doing this and this is nothing to do with your current PPC. This is keep everything you're doing, keep doing it, keep optimizing it. We're doing something else for the next 2 days. This is what's going to happen. I made these designs on Canva. You're going to run them for me. And if you don't
this,
I think it's brilliant. So there we go. That's as much as we can fit in today. Thank you so much. I can continue this conversation for much longer, but there is a course. So for everyone who is interested in this and who has questions, who wants to see how this is done in practice, wants to see Trevor jam the buttons in the platforms and do the things, the course will be out next week, Thursday, I believe. That's the plan, as far as I know. So obviously the webinar itself will also be on demand. So by the time someone watches, it will be there. It will be on our website as well. So we will put the landing page up I think by tomorrow. There's a wait list as well. So if you're very keen on this, it will go out with the email to promote this webinar. I'll also be sending out a too long didn't read version summary where you will find all the details. So if anyone has any questions for Trevor, you can also reach him on LinkedIn. I'm quite sure he's open to helping and answering any technical things. And if you come up with any different ways to use this, also let Trevor know.
Oh yeah, tell me.
Yeah, because we're all here to learn at the end of the day. So thank you so much, Trevor, and have a great day. And we really, really look forward to your course and empowering the community with this framework.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure to do it. And best of luck to all of you who are looking to improve your conversions.
There we go. Cheers, guys. Have a great day.